Since I was a little boy, I've often wondered about sand. Going along the seashore in our little village of Cobden on the west coast of the South Island, I would love to run in the sand. And of course around the sand were the stones. And later on in life I began to think more deeply about sand. It was just lovely to have the warm sand on your feet when you were running in the summer as a 7-year-old. But as I grew older, I began to think about sand. And I realized after a time that it was a cycle. Sand is of a cycle. Sand is telling us something about nature, about one of the principles that is operating in the world today, has operated since the beginning of time. The principle being that mountains become sand. That the mountains that have been raised up by the great plates, the tectonic plates of the planet, raised so high, are all being brought down. And ultimately they're brought down to sand. And the mountains eventually become plains. So there's an amazing cycle when we look at geological time. Sand is created out of rock that has been broken on the mountain tops by the work of ice and the work of the summer sun, expanding it and exploding it in a kind of timeless way. It's never noticed, but it's happening day by day. And then those rocks tumble down into the great rivers eventually, and are tumbled in the flood tides, and all the time they're being tumbled, they start as jagged pieces, but they are being smoothed. The jagged ends are being knocked off. And that's another kind of rule we find when we look at how nature moves, because the rock, which is so jagged and smooth, becomes smooth. It's quite an amazing thing that when the rock falls into the stream, the whole thing that's happening from that moment is that it's becoming rounded. It's being shaped by water. In the Maori world we call it wai. Wai is water. And the water has the power to tumble it in the flood tides and bring that sharp rock into a smooth shape, moving towards a circle. And that's the thing about sand, it's part of that huge circle, because eventually what's knocked off the rock is ground by other rocks in the flood tides and carried by the rivers into the ocean and then sent up to the shore where I could run it as a boy, feel the sand on my feet and enjoy the touch of it, build sand castles of it, play with it. But intervening in my play in a great cycle of life, of stone. So sand is telling us that there is change, constant change on the planet. We think we are in a changeless space, but change is all around us. And sand reminds me of change and of the great circles that are part of life, that the mountains ultimately are destined to become plains. And then the time will come and the tectonic plates may move again in a special way and raise those plains up high. Give us mountains again, young mountains that are to be worn down by the pressure of ice in winter and the heat of the sun in summer. So sand takes us on to another story really, and that's where I love to go now, and that's the story of stone, of rock.